The Korath fleet hovered in silent orbit, casting long shadows over the ruins of Earth, a once thriving planet, now reduced to a lifeless rock. Wakor, the leader of the Dominion's invasion force, studied the planet below with sharp, alien eyes, his mind calculating the easy conquest that awaited. The Dominion had wiped out species far more advanced than Earth's former inhabitants. This would be no different. Reports confirmed the absence of life. Velkara, the fleet's chief scientist, spoke calmly as her fingers danced over a series of holographic screens. The world is barren. The humans perished in the Great Collapse centuries ago. There is nothing left to fear. Wakor nodded, but a gnawing doubt lingered in the back of his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, a nagging intuition that told him the world was not as empty as the data suggested. Still, the records were clear. The humans had disappeared. There was nothing left but their crumbling cities and scorched landscape. "Prepare the forces," Wakor ordered, his voice sharp. "This planet is ours now." As the fleets dropped, ships descended. The once peaceful silence of space was broken by the roar of engines. The Korath forces moved into position, ready to establish a forward base. Velkara glanced up from her console, eyes narrowed as she watched the readouts. "I'm detecting something," she murmured, tapping the screen again. "Energy readings, unexplained. It's a pulse." The commander's gaze snapped to her. "What are you saying?" Velkara's brow furrowed. "I don't know. It's faint, but..." Before she could finish her sentence, the pulse intensified, a massive surge of energy that lit up the dark expanse of space. It rattled the ship's systems, the shockwave pulsing through the hull. The Korath officers on the bridge scrambled to stabilize their consoles, panic creeping into their voices. "What the hell is happening?" one of the soldiers shouted. "Report!" Wakor barked, his voice filled with a rare unease. Velkara's fingers flew over her controls, trying to make sense of the data. "The pulse. It's originating from the surface. I don't understand. This world is supposed to be dead. There. Should be nothing, no energy, no life." Wakor's gaze darkened. "Prepare to land. We'll investigate. I want answers, Velkara." As the fleet's ships descended into Earth's atmosphere, the pulse grew louder, echoing across the fleet like a signal of some unknown origin. The atmosphere was thick with the remnants of a forgotten world, the air cold and sterile as if the planet itself had been abandoned for centuries. Beneath the barren surface, far beneath the dead cities, humanity's final defense stirred. The eye, dormant systems that had lain untouched for generations, flickered to life. An old, heavily shielded bunker, buried deep beneath the earth, began to hum with activity. The stasis pods inside buzzed as the machines that kept the last remnants of humanity in slumber powered up. Inside one of the pods, Commander Kira Solis's eyes slowly opened. The world around her was dark, her body stiff from long disuse. She blinked, disoriented, her senses struggling to adjust to the sudden activity. A soft mechanical voice echoed in the darkness. Kira's mind raced. The last thing she remembered was the order to enter stasis. She had led humanity's final stand, and Earth had been lost. She had fallen into this artificial sleep, a last-ditch attempt to preserve what remained of humanity's military power. And now somehow she was awake. The world outside her pod was silent, but she knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. There was something wrong. Something was stirring. The planet, her home, wasn't as dead as they had thought. The cold metallic doors slid open, revealing the blackened world outside, covered in ash and dust. Kira's breath caught as she took in the scene. This was not the Earth she had known, but it was still her world, and it was still worth saving. The hum of the ancient technology that had kept her alive for so long began to die down as the rest of her squad began to stir. The other soldiers, too, began to wake from their long slumber, their bodies aching as they emerged from the stasis pods. They had been asleep for far too long, but now they were ready to fight. The commander activated the communication system. The voice of her superior officer, General Anders, crackled through the static. "Commander Solis, report. What's the situation?" Kira gritted her teeth. I'm awake, sir, and I'm seeing signs of activity. Alien ships in orbit, landing forces moving to the surface. They're here. Anders' voice came back, laced with disbelief. What? How is that possible? We thought we were the last. Kira's eyes narrowed. Apparently Earth's not as dead as they think. I don't know who they are, but they'll regret ever setting foot on this world. A low growl rumbled from her soldiers, their training kicking in. They were the forgotten warriors of Earth, soldiers left behind to protect what remained of their planet's legacy. And now, with their enemies unknowingly landing on their doorstep, they were about to show the Korath that humanity was far from extinct. In orbit above, Wekor stood in the command center of his flagship, his mind racing, as his officers scrambled to make sense of the strange pulse. What is it? He growled. Velkara's voice trembled slightly. I'm not sure. It's like a signal. But there's no known frequency that matches. Wekor's patience was running thin. Get your act together. We're landing, and I want answers. This planet belongs to the Dominion. But even as he spoke, a chill washed over him, a feeling of dread creeping through his veins. Something told him that they had just made a grave mistake. The Korath fleet descended through the thick atmosphere, their ships cutting through the clouds with mechanical precision. The world beneath them was barren, desolate, its cities long, reduced to rubble. The once green plains were now lifeless deserts. The oceans dried up, leaving only salt flats and cracked earth. To an outsider, Earth was little more than a cautionary tale, a world that had burned itself out, its population wiped out by a cataclysmic war. But to the Korath, Earth represented a forgotten history, one they were now about to rewrite. As the landing ships touched down with heavy thuds on the cracked ground, the Korath soldiers filed out, their armor clanking as they moved swiftly across the dead landscape. The air was thick with the smell of dust and decay, the eerie silence amplified by the low hum of their advanced technology. Wekor, standing at the head of the landing party, surveyed the surroundings with a steady gaze. His mind was still grappling with the unexplained energy pulses that had interrupted their descent. We will secure the area, Wekor ordered. Search for any remaining defenses. This planet is ours now. Velkara, her sharp alien features, still tense with the mystery of the pulse, glanced at her readings. I'm still picking up anomalous signals from the surface. They're weak, but they're consistent. We have already established full control, Wekor growled. The humans are long gone. But something in his voice betrayed him. He couldn't quite shake the feeling that he was being watched. The Korath began to fan out, their weapons drawn, the ground beneath them crackling with the energy of a forgotten world. They moved through the remains of an ancient city, its once proud structures now little more than skeletal ruins. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of their heavy boots crunching on the dry earth. As they advanced, a strange sight caught the attention of one of the soldiers. A metallic object half buried in the sand glinted in the dim light. He bent down to examine it, his fingers brushing away the dust that had accumulated over centuries. It was a piece of technology, alien, yet unmistakably human in design. What is this? He muttered, his voice tinged with awe. Velkara, approaching from behind, looked down at the object, her eyes narrowing. It's one of their old military devices, she said. But why is it still functioning? The humans... Her words were cut off by the sudden sharp sound of an explosion. The ground beneath their feet shook violently as a shock wave rippled outward, sending dust and debris flying into the air. Wekor's soldiers staggered, their weapons raised in an instant as they scanned the horizon for any signs of attack. Get to cover, Wekor commanded, his voice a thunderous roar. What was that? Before anyone could respond, a second explosion ripped through the ground, followed by a series of smaller, but no less deadly bursts. The Korath soldiers scrambled for cover as the earth itself seemed to rebel against their presence. Something was wrong. This wasn't just the remnants of a dead world. The pulse that had interrupted their systems earlier was growing stronger, the energy rippling through the air, as if the planet itself had awakened. From behind the broken walls of the city, a figure emerged, clad in dark, tattered armor, its movements swift and silent. The Korath turned in unison, their weapons trained on the newcomer. "I knew you would come," the figure said, its voice hoarse but filled with quiet authority. Wikor's eyes narrowed, his instincts telling him this was no mere survivor. This was something far more dangerous. The figure stepped forward, revealing a battle-worn face that had seen decades of war, but still held the fierce determination of a soldier who had never surrendered. "I am Commander Kira Solis," she said, her tone cold yet undeniably resolute. "And you've just made the biggest mistake of your lives." Before anyone could react, a loud mechanical hum filled the air. From beneath the ground, massive doors began to slide open, revealing an underground complex that had remained hidden for centuries. The Korath stood frozen, their eyes wide with disbelief. The underground facility was a relic from humanity's last days, an immense, self-sustaining military base buried deep beneath the surface. The Korath had never even considered the possibility that something like this could exist. Kira's squad, fully armed and equipped with the ancient technology of Earth's greatest warriors, emerged from the darkness, their faces hard and determined. They moved with the precision of soldiers who had been trained for a war that had never come, yet had always been ready. "You thought we were gone," Kira said, her eyes locked on Wekor. "But we've been waiting, and now you'll pay for what you did." With a single motion, she activated a device on her wrist, sending a signal to the base. The ground beneath the Korath soldiers shook once more, and massive mechanical structures began to rise from the earth, revealing themselves to be ancient war machines, humanoid mechs, their weapons primed and ready. The Korath soldiers recoiled, in shock as the mechs powered up, their massive forms towering over them. These were no mere relics. They were the last line of defense against an invasion, a force that had been lying in wait for centuries. The mechs, though aged, were still formidable, equipped with advanced weaponry, defensive shields, and powerful thrusters that made them more than a match for the Korath soldiers. Wekor's mind raced. The technology was advanced, too advanced. It didn't make sense. How had humanity hidden such a force? How had they survived, let alone thrived in secret? Kira's voice cut through the confusion. "This is your last warning. Leave this world, or we will show you what it means to underestimate humanity." The Korath soldiers hesitated, their weapons lowering as they processed the situation. They had invaded countless worlds, overrun civilizations that had stood for millennia, but this was different. The humans were not as they had been told. They were not weak. They were not extinct. And now they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for revenge. Wekor clenched his fists. "This is impossible," he muttered. "There is no way they could have built this power." Kira's lips curled into a cold smile. "You think you can take Earth? You don't even know what you're up against." As the Korath scrambled to regroup, the mechs advanced. Their massive feet pounded the earth, sending shockwaves through the ground. The air hummed with the energy of the ancient technology, the pulse that had first shaken the Korath fleet now fully realized on the surface. The Korath soldiers, who had once thought of Earth as a dead world, now understood the true depth of their mistake. Humanity had not been wiped out. It had merely been sleeping, waiting for the moment when it would rise again, and now that moment had arrived. Wekor stood frozen, his mind reeling. The power he had thought was extinct was very much alive, and it was coming for him. The Korath forces, though shaken by the sudden resurgence of humanity's hidden might, quickly rallied themselves. They had no choice. Wekor's orders were clear: take the planet or face the wrath of their superiors. The alien commander paced back and forth, his mind racing through the possibilities. The mechs, towering behemoths of forgotten technology, were a clear threat. The Korath had faced many challenges, but this was unlike anything they had anticipated. "I should have known," Wekor muttered under his breath. They were never truly gone. Velkara, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, stepped forward. "Wekor, we are not prepared for this. We didn't account for any defenses, let alone this level of advanced tech." "We didn't prepare for anything," Wekor snapped, his mind shifting between anger and fear. But we are here now and we cannot afford to retreat. Kira Sola stood at the head of her team, her face a mask of grim determination. Behind her, the towering mechs loomed, each one a deadly weapon of war. Their massive metal limbs flexed, their weapons charged, ready to wreak havoc on any who dared challenge humanity's resurgence. The soldiers beside her, battle-hardened remnants of Earth's final defense forces, lined up, weapons drawn, eyes fixed on the Korath. "Let's show them why they should never have set foot on this world," Kira said quietly, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. She raised her hand, signaling the activation of the mech's primary weapons systems. The ground beneath them vibrated as the machines powered up, their shields shimmering to life with a soft hum. "Prepare to fight," she ordered, her voice like a drumbeat. "And don't hold back." The Korath commander hesitated only for a moment before issuing his own orders. "Regroup," Wekor barked. "Engage with everything we have. These machines will fall, just like their creators did." The battlefield was set. On one side stood the Korath, their heavily armored troops ready for battle, weapons primed and eager to destroy. On the other, humanity's forgotten warriors rising from the ashes eager to reclaim their home. With a deafening roar, the battle began. The Korath charged forward, their weapons crackling with energy as they fired at the advancing mechs. The blasts hit their shields, sending ripples of energy cascading outward, but the shields held strong. The mechs moved forward with chilling precision, their heavy steps shaking the earth beneath them. They fired back, their weapons unleashing waves of destructive energy, striking down the Korath soldiers who dared to stand in their way. Kira's eyes never left the battlefield. She directed her team with military precision, coordinating their movements, ensuring that each mech was in the right place at the right time. Her mind worked faster than her body could move, each decision critical to the outcome of the battle. She knew that every second counted. One of her soldiers, a young woman named Lieutenant Rena, moved with fluid grace inside her mech. Her weapon fired with deadly accuracy, cutting through Korath soldiers with ease. She moved like a dancer on the battlefield, her every move calculated, her every shot precise. "Keep moving," Kira ordered, her voice steady, calm despite the chaos unfolding around them. "Stay in formation, don't let them flank us." The Korath were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless, but humanity's warriors were more than ready. Every blast of energy, every strike from the mechs, was a message. Earth was not dead and humanity was not weak. They had been waiting for this moment, and now they were ready to make their stand. Wekor watched from his command center, his fists clenched in anger and frustration. The mechs were far stronger than he had anticipated, their firepower unmatched. The Korath were being driven back, their lines faltering as the humans pushed forward with relentless determination. "Velkara!" Wekor shouted, his voice cracking. "What do we do? They are too powerful." Velkara's eyes scanned the battlefield, her mind working furiously. "We need to disable their shields, find a way to break through. If we don't, we'll be wiped out before we can even touch their defenses." "I don't care how we do it," Wekor growled. "Just make it happen." Velkara's mind raced as she tapped into the fleet's remaining systems. The Korath had more advanced weapons than the humans, but they lacked the sheer adaptability of the Earth-based mechs. The mechs were powered by an ancient self-sustaining energy source, one that even the Korath could not replicate. It was humanity's greatest asset, and now it was their greatest weapon. "We can use their pulse," Velkara said, her voice trembling with the urgency of the situation. "If we can redirect it, amplify it through their systems, we might be able to disrupt their shields. But we need to get close enough to the source." Wekor nodded grimly. "Then we'll get close. Prepare the bombers. We'll strike at their core and tear this planet apart if we have to." Velkara hesitated, but there was no time to argue. "It's our only chance." As the Korath scrambled to respond, Kira and her squad pressed forward. The battle raged on around them, but there was no stopping the momentum now. Each blast from the mech sent the Korath soldiers reeling, their formation falling apart as the humans pushed forward, ever closer to victory. Kira's mech strode across the battlefield, its massive footfalls shaking the ground. She fired her, weapons obliterating anything in her path. The mechs were unstoppable, but the Korath were not giving up. They regrouped, launching a desperate counterattack. Wekor's bombers flew overhead, releasing a barrage of energy weapons designed to pierce the mech's thick armor. One of the bombers targeted Kira's mech, sending a deadly missile streaking through the air. The explosion was massive, throwing dust and debris into the air, but the mech's shielding held strong. The blast knocked Kira's machine off balance, but she quickly regained control, her eyes narrowing with fierce determination. "They want to play dirty?" she muttered under her breath. "Let's show them how humans fight." With a fierce cry, Kira's mech surged forward, using its thrusters to propel itself toward the nearest Korath bomber. Her weapons fired in rapid succession, each shot tearing through the bomber's hull. The Korath craft spiraled out of control, crashing into the ground in a fiery explosion. The Korath bombers were no longer a threat. Kira's mech, along with her squad, had turned the tide of the battle. The Korath soldiers, now realizing they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered, began to retreat, their will to fight crumbling in the face of humanity's power. But Wakor wasn't ready to admit defeat. He turned to Velkara, his eyes burning with rage. "We are not leaving without Earth. Prepare the final strike. We'll make them pay for every lost soldier." But as he spoke, the ground shook again. This time, it wasn't the humans advancing. It was something far worse, something far older. Kira stood atop the battlefield, watching as the skies above Earth darkened. Her heart pounded in her chest as she realized the full scope of what was happening. The pulse had grown stronger, the energy now cascading from beneath the surface. Something ancient, something powerful, was awakening. "We may have just unleashed the true power of this planet," Kira whispered, her voice filled with awe and terror. And then the world trembled as the final reckoning approached. The ground trembled once more. But this time, it wasn't from the mechs or the Korath forces. It was as if the very core of Earth itself was coming alive, as if the planet had been waiting for centuries to awaken and fight back. Kira's gaze shifted toward the horizon. The pulse was no longer just a distant anomaly. It was now an undeniable force, radiating from deep beneath the surface. The Earth cracked, and massive structures began to rise from the ground, ancient, colossal, and powerful. These were no mere weapons. They were relics of a forgotten Earth, long buried and hidden away. The very machinery that had once been used to defend humanity in its darkest hour had returned to life. Kira's heart raced as she took in the scene before her. The Korath had no idea what they had just triggered. These were not just mechs, not just ancient weapons. They were a response to the Korath invasion, a force of Earth's last line of defense, crafted by a civilization that had been long lost to time. The last hidden warriors of Earth had been awakened, and they were not about to let their planet fall without a fight. The sky darkened as the rising structures loomed over the battlefield. Massive sentinels, towering figures covered in strange, organic armor appeared from beneath the ground. They were unlike anything the Korath had ever seen. The pulse had been a beacon, a signal that activated these dormant guardians, machines that had been built to protect Earth from an enemy far greater than the Korath. Wekor stood on the battlefield, his mind racing. His soldiers, once full of bravado, now hesitated. The Korath had faced countless enemies, had conquered civilizations that had stood for millennia, but nothing prepared them for this. The sentinels moved with deadly precision, their massive weapons lighting up the sky as they unleashed hell on the Korath forces. "We can't win this," Velkara whispered, her voice barely audible over the chaos. "This isn't a battle anymore. This is a war we can't win." Wekor's eyes flicked around the battlefield, watching as the Korath soldiers were crushed beneath the weight of Earth's forgotten warriors. The bombers, once so confident, were now falling from the sky, their engines disabled by the overwhelming power of the sentinels. The Korath forces were scattered, their ranks broken and their morale shattered. This was not just a defeat. This was an annihilation. Kira, standing in the midst of the chaos, felt the weight of the moment. She watched as the Korath struggled to regroup, their ships in disarray, their ground forces falling one by one. It was as if the planet itself was rejecting them, pushing back with a force that was both physical and emotional. These invaders who had come to claim a dead world were now facing the full fury of humanity's hidden strength. Kira felt a sense of satisfaction deep in her chest, but it was tempered with something else, a feeling of loss, of mourning for what had been. Earth had been scarred, its people lost, and its history erased. But now, with the Korath retreating, Earth's warriors had risen, and they were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting for a planet that had been forgotten by the rest of the galaxy, fighting to reclaim what was once theirs. Wikor, realizing that the battle was lost, ordered a full retreat. His fleet, once so powerful, was now a shadow of its former self. "Fall back," he shouted. "All units, fall back." But the retreat was no use. The Korath had underestimated Earth's resilience, its ability to survive against all odds. The Sentinels continued their relentless assault, pushing the Korath forces back, driving them toward the edge of the planet's atmosphere. Kira watched as the last of the Korath ships scrambled to escape. She knew that this victory was only temporary, that the Korath would return one day, perhaps with more power and more resources. But for now, Earth had proven something. It had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated. The Korath may have come to conquer, but they had only awakened something far more dangerous than they had anticipated. As the battle drew to a close, Kira stood amidst the wreckage of the Korath forces, her mech's giant form towering over the destroyed battlefield. The sky above her was beginning to clear, the dark clouds slowly dispersing as the planet began to heal. The energy pulse had subsided, the machines returning to their dormant state once more. Earth had won, for now. Kira's voice crackled over the comms, her tone steady but filled with the weight of everything they had lost. "This is only the beginning. We've fought back the Korath, but there are others out there, watching. They'll come, and when they do, we'll be ready." She paused for a moment, looking at the remnants of the Korath fleet still fleeing into space. But for now, Earth is safe, and that's enough. The Sentinels, the mighty guardians of the Earth, slowly lowered their weapons, retreating into the Earth once more, their massive forms disappearing beneath the surface. Kira felt the ground beneath her shift as the last of the machines settled back into their dormant state. The pulse, the signal, the awakening, it was all over for now. And as the dust settled and the last of the Korath forces disappeared into the void, Kira allowed herself a moment of peace. The planet had fought back. Earth had won. But the war was far from over.